Look, Dr. S, you're a scholar and a professor, and you've written lots of books, had them published. Aren't you the beneficiary of decades of feminism?
Hmm.
And then, so why would you call it something wicked? So, how would you
Yeah.
respond to that kind of a question?
Yeah. No, I think that's a great question, and it's one I get a lot. I think it's come up in probably just about every com box of anything I've ever written.
Yeah.
But I think that, that one of the things that's really interesting to me is just with that question is it presumes that it really is only through feminism that I received my education, that it was feminism that opened the doors to education. And I think we have this kind of framing wrong. In fact, the other day I was on another podcast, and the question was, I know brilliant women, but I also have issues with feminism. How can this be? Like we sort of have bought into this narrative that feminism is what gave women any option, any opportunity, anything good in the culture. And I think that's been one of the things that I've been really researching, is just to see, like, where did that come from, and where did this idea that women weren't educated and couldn't be educated come from? And the history is a lot richer and more interesting. I think the other piece that's fascinating is to see how much has actually really come from the Industrial Revolution,
Hmm.
both good and bad. But I think it's more things like my dishwasher and my washing machine and the fact that I can go, I've got DoorDash to feed my children. Those are things that have allowed me the space, and allowed our culture the space to really be able to not just educate women, but men, second, third, fourth sons that historically never would have been educated either. So I think it's an important question, but I think I call it like a gatekeeper or doorkeeper
Right.
question, because
Yeah.
what it really does is it prevents people from scrutinizing feminism and saying, there's real problems with this. Can we begin to look at this? The other one is sort of the one you were just referring to, that idea of, well, if you don't like feminism, you must really be against women. Or I'm sure one you've heard a lot or will hear is, you're men, you can't talk about this. And I think it's really fascinating, because as Christians, we would never accept that. We would never allow other Christians to just say, well, you can't talk about your religion in a rational way.
Mhm.
Because you've benefited from it, or in a critical way, or in a way that questions it because
Right.
you've benefited from it. So I think it's always amazing to me, because most people would say we have to be critical. We live in an age where we think through things. We have to be rational and critical of things. Just measure them in an appropriate way, except feminism. And that's the one taboo, I think, in the culture that we're really not supposed to touch. So obviously I have, felt the sting of touching something that's so unpopular, but at the same time, I'm really seeing this huge, I've been writing about this for 10 years, and I'm really seeing this huge transition happen, where people are talking about it in ways that they never were before. And I know it's not just me. I think there's been some big changes in the culture. I think men are feeling less controlled and confined in their thoughts about it as well. So it's been really exciting to kind of be watching this unfold, and obviously be given a platform by people like yourself in a way that previously never would have happened. I think people were really closed off to the idea.
Hmm.
So I'm grateful to you as men to hosting me today.
Oh, well, grateful to have you. Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
absolutely.
Yeah, and that's that really, and it is. Well, we'll get into this a little bit too further on, but even the way it has impacted men, I mentioned kind of even through your book, seeing ways that it's it impacted me in certain ideas, and even now you see that rejection of that culturally, where where there is hope, and there are people even turning to these like sort of ultra traditional forms of Christianity, specifically because they found, and you mentioned it a little bit in your book, this sort of feminist creep into even conservative churches, but obviously the more liberal churches. Yeah, so there's definitely a lot to get into here.